Right, good afternoon, learners. This is 11IT, Information Technology. My name is Mr. Freeman, and we're going to carry on with part 6 of text files, which is writing to text files. So now, if those of you who missed us yesterday, please go and look at that recorded lesson as well, because we didn't manage to finish yesterday, so we're going to have to carry on today with the rest of that activity. So that will keep us busy for, let's say, the first third. And then I will start with the final activity that is sort of a consolidation of everything that we've done with text file reading, writing, string manipulation, and we're going to combine it all in a sort of a reporting function where we take whatever's in our text file and we process it a bit, and we give a nice presentation in the form of a report that we will write to a text file again. So there's quite a lot to do. We definitely will not finish the second activity today. So hopefully when we carry on tomorrow, we would finish it in time so that on Monday we can start with brand new work, which is your own user-defined functions and procedures. So that would be a brand new chapter there. So let me carry on. So just going to skip the recap from yesterday and move on to our activity. So yesterday we started with our activity, and the idea of that, three things. We're playing around with this whole Pig Latin language where we take English words and we change it slightly. So we take, I'm just going to go here to Delphi here in the middle. And so the idea is to read in a paragraph, one sentence per line, and read that into a memo. And then we are going to change our English into Pig Latin. So if I look at my example over here, Delphi, the idea is you take your first character, you put it right at the end, and you add the AY after that so that your word now becomes Elfide. And after we've converted every single word from English into Pig Latin in every single line, we would then just add that line to another memo, which is our Pig Latin memo. So that's what we're busy with at the moment. And then right after that, we're going to take whatever's in my Pig Latin memo, use that Pig Latin memo not just as an output component, but also as a temporary storage component. And I'm going to grab straight from there one line at a time and write that to our text file, which we'll get to in about 10 or 15 minutes from now. Okay, so we've done this. We've set up our form, and this is my example text file with all the sentences that I've used. So that was step 2. And then we finished step 3, reading from the text file. So we got the text. It was simple. We just added them to the English memo yesterday, one at a time. So if I can go to my design, so that was that step over there. So we basically just read everything and placed that into our English memo over here, and we are currently with this step where we're converting English into Pig Latin. And it is, you know, I am finding it quite complicated, especially with this whole repeat until variation. And I must admit, it's not my favorite type of doing things. You know, my logical brain wants to always do a while. But yeah, let's push through with it, and then you can compare the repeat until variation to what we've done in a while loop about 2 or 3 lessons back. Okay, so we've done this step and we are busy with this step round about over here, I think. But let's just start. So what we do is we loop through each memo line in English. So let me run that again. And I read the text file paragraph into English. So from here on, what we're doing is we're taking every single line from this memo and we're converting one word at a time. So our outer loop is reading one line at a time. Our inner loop is handling every single word and changing that into Big Latin. And as we change the words, we add a space and we add our changed word, our converted word, to a new string that we would then display one line at a time in our outer loop over here. Okay. So we've looped through each memo line. We've done that already. We've removed the full stop because yesterday, as I explained, the last word will have a full stop. So if I take the first word of that last word and put it at the end, you will sort of have a full stop somewhere in the middle, somewhere towards the end of that. So I just wanted to remove the full stop, and I think we used the set length method on S-line, and we simply said, okay, it's now not going to be the whole line, it's now going to be one shorter, thereby cutting off that full stop. So let's go to that code. Okay, so that's the English to Big Latin over there. So that was me looping through the memo. Okay, now memo.lines has a property called count, and that tells me how many lines are filled in this memo. And I start at 0 because my lines property is of a type T strings, and every single line in my memo is numbered from 0 to wherever. So that's why we start with 0 over there. So my first line is going to be lines at 0, which is the I, and I'm going to put that into S line. And I'm going to continue that in my outer loop until count minus 1. Okay, just to say again, why minus 1? Because I start at 0. If it was 1 to 10, I would have repeated 10 times. But if I go 0 to 10, I would be repeating 1 too many times. That's why I'm putting the minus 1 over there. Okay, then in my outer loop, as I said, I got S line from memo, the first line. This is where I remove the full stop. So I make the set length of S line just one less than what the length would be. So that's length of S line minus 1. And then if I go through my steps again, it says here remove the full stop, but also add a space at the end, because we'll need that with our algorithm in order to get that last word and then convert everything to lowercase. So that is what this line is about. So I'm converting everything to lowercase there, and I'm adding a space. Now the next step is where the tricky bit comes in. We are saying repeat until next space equals 0. Okay, so I haven't fetched the next space again, but because it's a repeat until, I will always at least follow my repeat once. So that's my repeat until my next space position is 0. In other words, until there's no more words. On the last word after that, if I try and get my space position, I would get a 0, and that will allow me to exit this inner loop over here. Okay, just to recap. So my outer loop loops through one line at a time, and my inner loop takes every single word inside that line. Right. So let's go back one. So that is where I'm saying repeat until next space equals 0. Then I get my space position, and then I ask if next space is not 0. In other words, just in case I haven't reached the line or end of the line already, I want to get my space position over there. So that's what I did over here. I get the position of my space in S line. So the first time in this inner loop, let me just open my text file so you can see. Okay, so the outer loop helped me to get the entire line, and now the inner loop is where I'm saying, okay, where's that space? What position is the space? I'm saying if that space is not 0, and this would be the case, right? Because it's not 0, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's not 0, do the following. However, if I'm at the end, don't do the following. Okay, so that's why I'm doing that. So over here, I extract the next word, I delete that word from S-line, and I convert the word that I extracted to Pig Latin by moving the first character to the end and adding the AY to the end of that word. Sorry about that. So this is what we're doing. So I'm extracting my word. And I'm doing this you should be familiar with by now. So it is copy from S-line, from position 1. How many characters? Well, 1 less than that space. So now I've got my word, which I'll use just now, and then I go and proceed and delete that word plus the space from S-line, so that the next time I go into my inner loop, I would be fetching the space after the second word, and so on. Okay, so that is now ready for the next iteration of my inner loop. Now I'm going to convert my word into Pig Latin, and I'm saying, okay, copy S word from the second position all the way to the end. So that's everything except for the first letter. And then I take S word at position 1, which is the first character of my word, and I go and plonk it afterwards. And then after that, I put in my AY. And this is pretty much where we got to. And it says here, add AY to the end of the loop. I forgot to put the next instruction in, because obviously if I've got my S word now I have to add it to the end of Pig Latin. I just put that little space in between so that the words have their spaces again. So this is where we are at the moment. So let's carry on. So we now need to exit my if that checked for spaces and exit the inner loop, because I'm now done with that word. I'm ready to go back and start working on the second word, and so on. So it says here, make the first character of the converted string uppercase, remove the last space, and add a full stop. Now, I can do this step at this stage because I've now exited the inner loop. What does that mean? If I've exited my inner loop, I'm done with my entire sentence. But I'm still in my outer loop. I haven't started with the next sentence again. Before I start with the next sentence, I just want to make the first character of my sentence uppercase. I want to remove the last space that we added over here. And I want to add the full stop right at the end again that we've removed in the beginning. Okay, so let's do that. So outside of my inner loop, but still inside my outer loop, I want to now put all those things together. So it's Pig Latin or Pig Latin. So that is my entire sentence at the moment. And I'm going to make the first character in uppercase. Now, there's 2 functions that make a word into uppercase. Well, there's the one that you apply on a string, which is then uppercase, and then the parameters string, and it makes the first character in uppercase. Or we could use a different variation, the upcase function, that only takes 1 character. And let's use that, because I haven't showed you that one yet. So I'm going to go and say upcase. What I want to upcase, I want to take the first character of S Pig Latin. Which character? The first one. Okay, so now I know that one is the first one. And what do I want to do? Now I want to copy the rest of Pig Latin from the second character all the way to the end. So I'm going to say copy S Pig Latin, and I'm going to skip the first character, start with the second character, and go all the way to to the end. Okay. What have I done here? It's big Latin equals, okay. That is a function, so we need our brackets. And there's another function. Why is it not liking me over here right now? S big Latin becomes upcase of S big Latin. Did I spell that correctly at position 1? Yes, it should be no problem. Okay, well, let me think about that. And let's just carry on. Now, the next part is I need to remove the space. If anybody can see what I'm doing wrong, please comment and help me. So I want to now make the new length 1 less so that I can drop the space at the end. So we've done this one before. Okay, so we're going to set length of what? We're going to set length on S big Latin. To how many? Well, 1 less than the size of S big Latin. Okay, so there we go, minus 1. Okay, so now I've dropped my space. And then lastly, I need to just add a full stop at the end. So whatever is in S Latin at the moment, add to that 1 full stop. Just want to see if I run this quickly, see what's going on here. I've got S big Latin becomes upcase. Oh, wow. Look at that. That square bracket over there. That's my problem. Okay, so the square brackets, that's sort of seeing my string is big Latin as an array of characters. And I'm saying, please reference the first position. Right. Now we haven't, after that, we just need to add the text to the big Latin memo. So I'm going to say mem big Latin dot lines dot add. What am I adding? I'm adding big Latin. Okay, so let's hold thumbs and see if we have any errors or not. See if this works. Okay, so there's paragraph. I'm going to read it. There's my text. And I'm going to see if that works if I go to English to big Latin. There's definitely something wrong here. This looks like way too much text that I've converted. Let me just take a look. Okay, so I think I know what I've done wrong here. So my S big Latin, I've been adding a word every single time for the line, but then I forgot to reset it to nothing for the next line. So what I kept on doing is I'm just adding the second line to the first line and then displaying it all over again. By the time I'm done, I've got this huge long sentence. So roundabout over there, before I enter my inner loop, I just need to reset my big Latin to nothing. So I'm going to go big Latin. Now it becomes nothing again. So by the time, no, not there, not outside of my loop. Yes, sorry, outside of my inner loop, but inside my outer loop. So what I want to do is first line, I'm going to go and take every single word, add it to big Latin, 1 word at a time. But after that is, after my outer loop is done, I want to go back in here and just reset it to nothing. Let's see if that works. Right, there's my English, and here's my big Latin. Now that looks a lot better, except why is my first letter not capital? And why do I have a space in front of that? Okay, there must be a bug somewhere here. Okay, so let's see if we can solve this, if we look at it together. So where did that space come from? Where did I've removed my space here and I added a space here right in the end. It can't be that space. So there's word, there's delete. There's where I create my big Latin word and I add to, oh, right. Okay. Okay. I think I've got it now. So the first word at this stage, there's nothing in big Latin, okay, because I've reset it to do nothing. So the first word had nothing, and now I'm adding a space. So in effect, I'm adding a space right in the beginning, which is not what I want. So that is definitely wrong. And I think that is also answering my next question is, why is it not an uppercase? Because I've gone and I made the space uppercase at position 1. So that's definitely not going to help. We need to put that space somewhere else. What? Okay, so what if I put my space over there? Okay, if I put my space at the end of my converted word, I then add to big Latin this S word. So that solves the space for the first word. And in the second word, we'll have the space again. So I'm hoping that that's going to solve my problem right now. Let's take a look. Okay, holding thumbs. Fantastic. Okay, now finally it works. So there we go. So there's there, and there is the yete. So the T from there, I've placed at the end, followed by an AY, and there's my space, and we carry on all the way to the end, and my full stop is working. Fantastic. Hope it makes sense. It is rather complicated, but you know, these are the type of things that you can expect, especially in the last question of your exam, really having to solve problems. Yes, there's a lot of easy marks reading from the text file and writing to it, but you will always get these sort of problems that you'll have to solve. Okay, any questions there? Nothing? Okay, then we can carry on with the rest. So finally, we've done this conversion of English into Pig Latin. And then the final step is to write whatever is in the Pig Latin memo to the text file. Okay, so we're going to assign a file object. I'll just go and reassign the T file object that we've declared globally. You can use it over and over again. And question is, did I close my file? Oh, I didn't need it yet. I didn't need it yet. Did I close it here at the top? Let's see, did I close it? Yes, I did. Okay, so now it's safe to use it. Now it's safe to use it again. Right, so I'm going to assign the file object. Okay, so we don't need a variable. It exists already. So I'm just going to say assign file. And I'm going to assign to the file. I'm going to assign a new text file called piglatin.txt. This is where I want to write my text to. Okay, so we've assigned the file object. Now we want to ask a quick question. We want to say, okay, if this file exists already, now it doesn't exist at this stage, but we can test both scenarios. If the file exists already, then open this text file in such a way that you don't overwrite anything, but rather append to the end. If it doesn't exist, then create the file and rewrite from the start, but I also want to have some nice heading there at the beginning. Okay, if I'm going to append, I already have my heading from a previous writing. This time, if I just want to rewrite, I will just create my heading first and then write everything from the memo in there. How are we going to do that? We're going to loop through the memo, one line at a time, take the line from the memo and write it to the text file. Which is that step over there, and then we want to exit the loop and then also close the file at the end. Right, so I've assigned my file. So now I've got to ask my question. I'm going to say, okay, if file exists, then what? Well, which file exists? Same. If this one has already been created, there. If it's already there, then I just want to append. Now here's a new procedure for you. So the procedure to read from a text file, you know what that is? That is reset the file name. The one that just opens an existing text file and wants to append to it, guess what Delphi thought of to use as a name? They used append. So append opens an existing file and hold on. Append opens an existing file, goes to the last line, and puts the cursor there. So if this was my text file, which I know it isn't, what append does, it opens it and takes it over there. That's what append does. Right, so I just want to basically append that at that stage. Else, well, if it doesn't exist, I want to create it. Now here's another procedure, the one that creates, or the one that creates or overwrites. So it can do two things. I call the rewrite procedure. Now the rewrite does is it says, if the file doesn't exist, I'll create it and I'll go to the top because it's a blank file. If it does exist, it will still open it, but it will clear everything that was in there and it will start from the beginning. Okay, so it will delete all of this stuff and start there at the top. Okay, so that's my question. If it exists, then append, else rewrite. Now, what I see very, very often, and please, now, if you haven't been listening, listen now. I see it every single test and every single exam when I mark, the learners feel that they have to still put in a reset procedure when they want to write a file, and that is wrong. You only use the reset if you want to read from a file. You don't use the reset if you want to write to a file. Then you use either append or rewrite. Okay, it also opens like the reset, but it has additional functionality. You can now write to that text file. So from now on, please promise me you will never use reset where you write into a file. That will be wrong. Okay, so if the file exists, append, else write, do rewrite and write some sort of heading. So I'm going to go and say, so the procedure for this, instead of read line, it's now write line. And where am I writing to? I'm writing to the file. Oh, but this has got to go with my rewrite over here. So I'm going to just say begin and copy those in there because I don't want to write my heading if I'm just appending because it exists already. So write line is where am I writing to, and then what am I writing from? So firstly, that is just a string. I'm just going to write a string. So let's call it big Latin converted text or something like that. Okay. So that's going to write this first line at the beginning. Okay, so now after that, we can go to the next step. Okay, so I've got my heading and I start writing by looping through the memo. So I'm going to loop through the memo. Now we've done this before. It's we've looped through the English memo already. Now we're going to do it through the Big Latin, and it's the same story. We're going to use a for loop because we know we can determine how many lines there are. We're going to start at 0 because we're going to fetch the first position at dot lines at 0, and we're going to continue to the memo Big Latin dot lines dot count -1. Okay, so I'm going to start my for loop. And I'm going to start at 0. And it's mem big Latin dot lines dot count -1. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to write every single line to that. So I need to first extract my line from the memo into a variable, and then I can write that variable to the line. So I'm going to say S line, does that exist? No, I'll just create it over here. And I'm going to say, okay, S line is now going to be the first line in my memo. Okay, and that is memo big Latin dot lines, which is that T strings object, at position I, which is firstly at position 0 and 1, 2, and so on, carries on. Now that I've got that, I can proceed to write every single line to tfile that is currently in S line. Okay. Then when I'm done in my loop, I can go out, and I must never forget to close the file. Which one? Tfile. Okay, so let's hope for the best here. Now, okay, I've only got the paragraph at the moment, so let's run it. So I'm going to read the text file, English to Big Latin, and Big Latin to text file. I suppose I should have just put in a little show message there to say, okay, it was converted and written to your text file correctly, but let's see if that did work. So if I go and say open project, not project, sorry, open, I now have my Big Latin file that I've created. So if I open it, there it is. So just to test it one more time. So let's write a little sentence, perhaps in there. This is a sentence spelled correctly. And I'm going to go English to Big Latin and then Big Latin to text file. And if I go to my Big Latin, okie dokie, maybe I should have closed that first. Let's see if it worked. Yes, there we go. So it didn't override anything. It didn't put another heading at the bottom. Okay, it just went and it wrote my Big Latin for this is a sentence right at the bottom. And I think, guys, that is it for this part of the lesson. I think it did take a little bit longer than I thought. So I'm really seeing us probably finishing the next activity on Monday, unfortunately. But, you know, I'd rather go slowly and make sure everybody knows what to do and what to expect, and that we've practiced it as many times as we can. Okay, so I'm going to just save all of that and go back to my PowerPoint. So what that lesson was all about is that we've read from a text file. We did quite a bit of tough manipulation. I don't think you're going to get string manipulation tougher than this one. If you can understand and follow this, then you should be able to handle anything they throw at you. And then we've learned how to convert the text and write them to a new text file. And we've looked at the append and overwriting. So write line is writing a line. Append is opening the text file and then adding to the bottom. And what was that last one? Rewrite. Okay? So rewrite is the one where if the file doesn't exist, it will create it. If it does exist, it will clear everything. Okay. So there again is my link to my textbooks, or not my textbooks, but the DBE textbooks. So you can go there and you can download them. And the next activity that we're going to start with is actually from that textbook, and that's going to incorporate everything we need. Okay, so we're going to read from text files. We're going to definitely, well, let me actually start there. Because if I don't start with this now, is everybody fine that we do start with that? Okay, so this would have been this lesson over here. Because we've got 10 minutes so that we can just at least understand what this progress is all about, what we want to do. So if I can say, welcome guys, this is the next lesson. This is where we were supposed to start today. But what we're going to do is we're going to use text files to create reports, and we're going to consolidate everything you've learned in the last 2 weeks. And hopefully by the end of this very, very long activity, you would understand everything around text files. And afterwards, I will possibly give you a link for some past papers that you can go and practice some more. All right, so what is this lesson about, or these 2 lessons, or possibly 2.5? You can use the data stored in text files to produce meaningful reports. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at an exact question from the grade 11 DBE textbook. It's on question 3 on page 125. And we're going to be opening a project called Staff Login. Okay, so let me get there. I think I've already got it over here. Okay, so it's quite involved. There's quite a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing. So we're going to have to open that staff login project from the 05 staff login folder that you would get if you download all your text files. Now, the scenario is a business requires a login system for employees when they interact with the work computer. Details on the users have been captured in a text file named staff. The text file contains the limited data formatted as follows. So it's got name, hash, ID number, hash, and password. Please remember that it won't necessarily always be a hash. Now, we've dealt with commas, I think. We've done hashes, we've done spaces, but it can be anything. It could be a tilde, it could be percentage signs, it could be anything. Okay. Now, so there's an example. The first line of the text file is there's Mike, the name, the ID number, and the password. So Mike is the staff name, there's his ID number, and KE is the member's password. So for convenience sake, all passwords have been set to the last 2 letters of the staff member's name. I guess when this program starts running and we add to it, we would probably be a scenario where a person can change his password to something more permanent. Now, very important, all staff members were born before the year 2000, because it gets really complicated. If you have somebody born in 22, then it becomes a bit of an issue with working out. I guess what we're going to be doing is probably going to be working out what the person's age is. All right, and from here on, we are going to basically start and carry on with this on page 126 of the textbook. So if I can go there right now, so there it is. Okay, so here is my activity. So what we have is we have the following data structures that have been declared globally. Okay, so we'll be accessing them obviously from more than one button. And what do we have? We have our names, 1 to 50 of string, passwords. Okay, so that is a parallel array to our name, storing employee passwords, and then our gender as well. So I guess Mike's going to go into this one at position 1, and Mike's password's going to go here, and then I guess we're going to have to figure out what his gender is as well as what his age is. Okay, guys, so we've got 5 minutes left. And then there's a IMAX integer that stores the number of elements in the array. So the 1 to 50, again, here's a recap. The 1 to 50 is, this is how much the array can store. In a big corporation, that would probably be a lot more than 50. But we're assuming this is a small company. No company would have more than 50 employees. So we don't know how many employees this company would have. And that is why we actually want to have this counter. We're going to call it IMAX, and that's going to store the actual number of elements in my array. In other words, the actual number of employees in our database or text file. All right. And then there's a constant called current year. It stores the current year. This value should be changed in its declaration from 2019 to the current year if necessary. And I see that as being necessary because we're now in 2020. And so I'm going to find that. So let's see. I've got my arrays, our name, our password, gender, age, and my max is currently sitting at 0. IMAX is currently sitting at 0. And I see this is allowed in our latest version of Delphi, the 10.3.3. As far as I recall, this was not allowed in the older Delphi. You would have to go initialize it somewhere in an implementation somewhere. Then the constant current year, I'm going to change to 2020. Okay, let's see if we have time for the first thing. So they give us an explanation of the SIID number. Now this is correct. This is how it works. So the first two numbers in your ID number is the year of birth, followed by the month of birth, the next two, and then the next two is the day of birth. So that over there would tell you when you were born. So I guess we're going to be using that to determine what the age of the employee is. And then digits 7 to 10. So that's this 5, 4, 2, 1 over there. Indicate whether the ID belongs to a male or a female. If this number is 5,000 or above, the ID belongs to a male. If it's less than 5,000, in other words, 4,999 or less, the ID belongs to a female. Okay, so in this case, the gender code is 5421, meaning that this ID belongs to a male. Okay, so that's all the background that we need. In the forms on show event, write code to do the following: connect to and open the text file called staff.txt for reading. Okay, so in my form show, I'm going to say assign file, and wonder if they made something here for it. Okay, so let's create a, let's call it tstaff of type text file. Okay, so we're going to assign the file tstaff, and we're going to link it to staff.txt. Right, so if I open that, okay, I see there's another one here called log, but let's look at staff for now. So there, exactly as we saw, that is what we're connecting to, and we're going to read from that. So we're going to say reset tstaff. I'm not going to bother with checking if the file exists at this stage. I think we've done that often enough. So now we're going to loop through the file, reading each line. Okay, and I'm probably going to stop after that. So I'm going to create my variable. Okay, and let's call it sline of type string. And I want to read through the entire one, so it's going to be a while loop, not end of file. Which one? Tstaff. And I'm going to read each line. So that is read line from tstaff into S-line. Guys, I think we'll probably pause right there, not a full stop, but a comma. So I think tomorrow what we'll do, I'll just quickly recap over everything, and then we'll carry on with extracting every single one of the tokens from tomorrow, and probably move over into Monday, and then we'll start with our functions and procedures on Tuesday. So if there's any questions, please write it down and ask it tomorrow as we start this lesson. Thank you, guys. Have a